just start smacking your face into a mountain of the stuff in front of a police station, then it's like, you're probably gonna get fucked. And I don't know if the other regular coke takers should really feel sorry for you in that situation. And that's kind of what Denims did, I think. I think Denims just trucked over a cement mixer full of the stuff in front of the police station and just went for a little swim in this, and went for a little swim in it with a megaphone blasting "fuck the cops," "fuck the police." Frogan is literally about to default early next week. What has she done with the 50k she raised? We have not heard from her or her attorney at all. She has like 5 days to respond to our complaint or she loses by default. Bro. Is this really a good idea? Like is she gonna kill herself? Think about it. Ethan's like a pretty big name. Okay, he got a lot of money, and he's like suing someone who doesn't have the financial, let alone the cognitive abilities to defend herself. I mean, bro. I think when I looked at those cases, like the only person I think who definitely deserves to get sued is probably Caseytron, because she just spent so long making a living off of like playing loops of herself in a corner and just AFKing for the entire stream, watching films and TV series. But Denims' reaction, as far as I remember, was long. It was bad faith, but it was long. I don't think like doing a bad reaction should get you sued. Frogan, I need to maybe watch what she did exactly, like how she reacted to it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a pretty disproportionate response. Like, and you know me, I'm all for disproportionate responses, okay? Because the aggressor needs to learn, okay? They need to learn that there's a time to walk away. With Denims, I think the argument is more like the malice, the statement of malice. The fact that she was like, yeah, watch it here instead of on Ethan's channel. To like 50k viewers or some shit. Or was it 30k? I can't remember. That was fucking mad. That was so dumb. You don't think malice is a factor? Yeah, I'm not talking about legal factors. I'm talking about just like a moral position of, because this is a thing that people miss about civil lawsuits is that civil lawsuits are always driven by some kind of personal choice, right? Because you bring the case. It's not like the cops arrest them and say, by the rule of the law, like this person needs to be, a civil suit has to be at the discretion of the person bringing the suit, right? If someone commits a civil offense against you, you can just choose not to sue and nothing happens. But that's why Ethan, you know, maybe he could sue me for over a few things. Like when I react to stuff, like I think most React content is not, would probably fail in fair use because we watch the entire fucking videos, right? And we often watch them live, like for the first time on stream, which is like, meaning that we don't even know which bits need to be played or not, or which bits need to be prepared for or not. So that's why I think setting the it's an arbitrary standard to say malice, but it's also one that in a social environment protects people who don't do it in such a flagrant way, right? Like taking fucking possession of cocaine is illegal, right? Across the board. But obviously people who take it at house parties are usually going to be fine, like personal use. But if you go outside a fucking police station and say, fuck the police, I'm taking a shitload of coke, and then just start smacking your face into a mountain of the stuff in front of a police station, then it's like, you're probably going to get fucked. And I don't know if the other regular coke takers should really feel sorry for you in that situation. And that's kind of what Denims did, I think. I think Denims just trucked over a cement mixer full of the stuff in front of the police station and just went for a little swim in this, and went for a little swim in it with a megaphone blasting "fuck the cops," "fuck the police." And I'm like, and occasionally people come into this chat and they're like, "Oh, don't LONERBOX, don't you do the same thing?" It's like, no, I don't actually. No. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't do this to someone. This is fucking. This is a bit much. Mm. Mike from PA's viral clip
between Arab and Jew. In the days that followed,
That's shit crazy. Jew is not a fucking ethnic. It is a Jewish is not an ethnicity. This constructed ethnicity, this demonic ethnicity, wholly invented
between Arab and Jew. In the
Not an ethnic. But this guy is, his brain is somewhere else, isn't he? I know he means Israeli Jew. I know what he's trying to say. It's still fucking brain dead. Because lots of national movements have leaders and conscious efforts at construction. It's not just like, do you think the borders of Europe just kind of formed like overnight randomly for no fucking reason? Like, oh, well, I guess everyone here just kind of happens to speak of the same. No, there were conscious efforts, man. Like unification of Italy was a whole fucking process. Unification of Germany was a whole conscious process. Like the breakup of Yugoslavia and the drawing up of borders there was a conscious process and it was fought over wars and ethnic cleansings and shit. Yeah, we don't call these fake national. It's just the irony, like, because he got banned for I think 1 or 2 days for this, but his explanation is fucking brilliant. You said Jew is not a fucking ethnic. Nice use of the stick there. Yes, it is. Jewish is not an ethnicity. This constructed ethnicity, this demonic ethnicity, wholly invented. It's interesting because this is the same argument that like fucking Zionist extremists say about Palestinians. Because really, it's just Arabs, and it's like an arbitrary border drawn by imperialists. That's what they would say. Like they would argue that. Is it really? Is that Palestine? Where does Palestine end? And what, like the Vilayet of Beirut and the Vilayet of Nablus and Acre? Like, where does that all start and end? You know, like Ottoman provinces moved around constantly. I don't know, stupid. But you don't make that argument. Like all nationalisms, or at least quite a lot of them, are fairly. They're usually from a particular like arbitrary point in time. Zionism is a constructed nationalism for settler colonialism in Palestine. You didn't say Zionism. That's what I was referring to. The context of me watching war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu talking to the UN almost a year ago makes that clear. I mean, it doesn't really. Like as if this makes it any better. Like the nerve of a white American to say that any other nationalism is constructed for settler colonialism. Are you fucking joking, man? What the fuck? Like an American saying this. I'm sorry. You're not allowed to say that as a white American. You can't do that. That's illegal. You should only be allowed to say this as a white American if you're willing to literally fucking volunteer yourself to a fucking lynch mob of Native Americans. Go find the nearest Native American lynch mob and just hand yourself over. Like, otherwise, this is not a serious position. Also, we moved from ethnic to national. Yeah, wow. Wait till we tell you about Lebanese nationalism, where we got those borders. Like the entire Middle East is just a bunch of borders drawn by a bunch of French and English poshos in 1919, 1920, 21, 22. But people in the region obviously have very, very strong feelings about their national identity. Yeah. Even though it's like, because that's just how it works. It's just how nationalism works. What's your opinion on nationalism and nationalist movements? Hutch seems to think the only kind of nationalism that exists is ultranationalism. I'm actually learning quite a lot from just reading about the origins of Zionism, and especially the context that it came under, because a lot of people say like, oh, history didn't start October 7th, but it also didn't start at 48. It didn't even start at 1917. And now the more I read it, it didn't even really start in 1881 either. And one good argument I heard, and someone brought this up to me on stream as well, is that where it seems to have started, I think, is a very clear cutoff point is the French Revolution, 1792, what? I don't know, 1789, whatever. Because one of the first speeches at the National Assembly was talking about national identity, like French national identity. And I think one of the first people who spoke in the National Assembly for France, they were talking about Jews and how Jews would actually they couldn't be included in French nationalism. Like they were something different because they were like others, they were outsiders, aliens. And this eventually became the case for every European and Middle Eastern nationalism. Like every Arab nationalism, every European nationalism was exclusionary to lots of different groups, but mainly, like more than any other, to Jews. They were exclusionary to Jews. Because Jews were seen as this kind of like, they were seen as another national group. They were seen as from an outside nation, but they were also from an outside nation that no longer existed. Like they were from a state that died, like the Jewish kingdom. So that's why you kind of had this constant, like they're constantly a parasite, like they're constantly an outsider. They're constantly like a potential fifth column. And especially because nationalism throughout the last 200 or 300 years in its inception is often very exclusionary as well as very preferential to the in-group. And that's kind of where Zionist and Jewish nationalism and modern Zionism is kind of, it's forced to happen in a way, because when you look at a lot of the original writings from different Zionists, and I didn't even know this, I didn't know that Pinsker, who was the one who wrote the pamphlet called Auto-Emancipation from like 1882 or whatever, like very before Herzl. I didn't know that Herzl and Pinsker just kind of just wrote the same shit, but didn't really realize that they were doing it. Like Herzl, I thought he was copying, but apparently there's like no evidence at all that Herzl had any idea that this text existed, that they both just came up with the same idea that like, yeah, Jews, we're always going to be outsiders. We're always going to get chased around. We're always going to be excluded. The only way that we won't be is if we have a state like everyone else. But yeah, like other Zionists had already been making this decision and writing this kind of stuff completely independently. And that kind of, I think that quite strongly suggests that a lot of original Zionism, although it was different in a lot of fairly important ways, it was also something that kind of converged independently because they were driven by the same forces, like the same material conditions. So it's not as if someone just like had a bright idea, then some shit happened. You know, it's never really the case like that. It's that the conditions are kind of are making these ideas unavoidable in different spaces at different times. It's more complex than this. Wow, really? The fucking historian, is it more complex than this little fucking 2-minute summary that I'm just giving on a stream as I'm summarizing the last week of reading that I've done, you fucking asshole? Yeah, of course, yeah, everything I just said is actually fucking bullshit and it's much more complicated. Thank you. God. I'm joking, mostly. Prick. Sorry, I haven't had my cornflakes today. Fuck off. The haircut looks great. Thank you. Thank you. Apologize right now. I'm sorry that you interjected with such a useless fucking comment. I'm sorry you did that to me. Okay. Peace Corps Destiny, yes or no? Shut up. Am I ready to start crashing out? Oh yeah. I feel like we need to have more conscious little segments of this stuff. These moments. Did your family fight in the Lebanese Civil War? My uncle by marriage fought for the Maronite Lebanese forces and is a character. No, I don't believe they did fight in the Lebanese Civil War. I think they were more focused on getting TF out. That I know of. Well, if they did fight, I don't know if they would tell me, but from my impression of how they talk, it doesn't seem like they were very interested in sectarian fucking conflict. None of them really seem to have an interest in that side of things. But okay. First off, guys, it's tanky time, okay? Tanky Tuesday. This was brilliant. One phone call is all it would take to stop Israel's genocide. If Israel doesn't comply, shut off weapons transfers. If Israel looks to get weapons elsewhere, put a sanctions package. And if that fails, invade Israel militarily. That escalated quickly. This is why all it takes is one phone call. First of all, we'll get into whether or not these phone calls that can affect Israeli policies to such a dramatic extent have ever been backed by threats of an invasion. What a fucking insane thing to say. What the fuck? Like, I'm so curious if America actually reaches here under, given that the question, when people were like, oh, Hasan or Trump, right? And honestly, there's too many parameters around that question to give like a proper answer to it, because you have to envision a world where Hasan is like a political candidate who's got a chance of winning 50 or more % of the popular vote. Like, that's crazy. That's a lot. Okay. And if you're in that world, like, how many of those people are tankies? How much purity testing is happening? How much escalation is happening? How much more radicalization has happened? And what are the kind of people that he's going to be elevating to his cabinet and all that? Like, I don't know. To me, that's quite scary. It's scary as well because at least with Trump is a fascist. He's a piece of shit. He does lots of like fucking reprehensible, disgusting things, some of which are going to leave like proper scars on the United States, like even if he's gone for like 10 years. The fact is that Trump is like, Trump's center, like the center of Trump's movement is Trump. It's not fascism. It's not like I'm the fascist and I'm going to do all the most fashy shit. It's the ideology of Trump. And the problem there, the weakness that they have, is that people are very, I think, confused and a bit lost as to what's going to come after Trump, because it's not really a question of who's going to fill the fascist boots the best, who's going to fit the ideology the best. It's who's going to be the most like Trump. And Trump would do things that are not fascist if it suited him, right? And that's why his opinions like are quite unpredictable. Like, they flip-flop quite a lot. His position, he's not as much of a simp for Putin as Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens want him to be, right? His Israel position seems to be like he's still on critical support for Israel, but then he's kind of like showing a bit of a shift, and he's upsetting a lot of his audience with it. So it's the kind of thing that might not really have like the same ability to plant roots. But with Hasan, the ideology is socialism, communism. And with Hasan gone, if he becomes president and fails, well, you've still got half the nation like who have subscribed and voted for a Marxist-Leninist. And the problem with Marxist-Leninists is that the more pure you are, the more radical you are, the better you are. So I'd be a bit more worried about like the trajectory that sets you on to have like a Hasan term and what would follow it up, because I feel like the kind of person like that Hasan is and the kind of way that these movements work is he would easily just pave the way for someone worse than he is. And that's like it's kind of like the question of, oh, is it like, it's not really Stalin or Trump, right? And first of all, everyone would say Trump over Stalin, okay? Just saying. So it's not as simple as, oh, so you would choose a fascist over a socialist? Well, with the right names, everyone would, yeah? Most people would choose Trump 1 over Stalin, sorry. Trump over Kim Jong-un? Yeah, probably. Trump over Pol Pot? Yeah, probably. Trump over Mao? Yeah, probably, yeah? So it's not that simple. But it's more like, is it Trump or Lenin? But then the question is like, Lenin already did a bunch of the things that paved the way for Stalin. He closed a bunch of the Soviet councils. He already clamped down on internal opposition. He already imposed a lot of like authoritarian measures. Like a lot of the environment was already there for Stalin to, the kind of person like Stalin to take over. So that's kind of where you get into a bit of a, I don't know. It's just there's too much alt history to really properly answer a question like this. But yeah. I'd be more inclined to say Hasan if we're just talking about him or Trump in terms of their messaging and everything, because at least with Hasan, there is still some like attempt at social democratic messaging. And a lot of the shit that Trump does with immigrants and all that, I don't think Hasan would do. So, I mean, I don't know what would happen, like how many people he would pardon for setting fire to like their landlords or to Israeli embassies or whatever the fuck else. But like the fact, also, I don't know why in that whole debate, no one mentioned this. No one mentioned this idea. The fact that people tried to frame this as socialism versus fascism. Are you fucking joking? Like, I understand that you only get this kind of perspective if you've been away for a week and touching grass, whatever, but it's not actually socialism versus fascism. It's socialism, it's fascism versus terrorism, okay? The last year or a year and a half of Hasan's advocacy has been about supporting fascists, like the biggest fascists in the fucking region, like the Houthis with Hezbollah, with apologia for Hamas. Like that kind of behavior is, we're calling this isn't really like there's a kind of intersection here where it's not just socialism, it's also socialism attached to campism and Islamic and like support for Islamic fundamentalists. I don't know why that part is missing, but yeah, okay. And I don't know, like Hasan's policy on Israel, like this would this is fucking insane. This is so erratic. Invade Israel militarily. What? I'm just so curious. Like, if America does this, or if America does a few bombings on Tel Aviv and manages to neutralize the IDF, I wonder what Hasan's response would be when that happens, and then Hamas or Hezbollah, or what's left of them, the Houthis, the groups in the West Bank, the proxies in Iraq and Syria, just be like, wait, wait, this guy just cleared the IDF for us? He's just like, the IDF is stun locked. They're incapacitated. Let's fucking go. Yes. And then when they just fucking storm into Israel, what's Hasan's response going to be then? Is he going to use military action or any phone calls? You think there really any phone calls trying to stop that? My guess is probably not. And then not to mention the amount of fucking Arabs that would die and the Israeli scramble for survival and like the amount of preemptive action, not to mention the fucking nukes. Like, I don't know. This is a lot of people dying potentially. It's like this is a fucking Armageddon in the Middle East if you try to do this from the United States. God. And then what, like Turkey comes, the Ottoman Empire returns and rules over the ashes. Oh, God. Yeah. This alone should disqualify this guy from any serious discourse, lol. He's just a frat bro who at the end of the day is an entertainer first and foremost. Even that is a stretch. Wow. US presidents have stopped Israel with one phone call under Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and even Biden in 2021. What made you feel so confident in your stupidity? Leave your hog box immediately. Okay. So I got curious when I read this morning and I did a bit of reading. Do you realize that every single one of these is bullshit? That's crazy. I had no idea that one magic perfect phone call is actually not how you do history or foreign policy ever. Actually, yeah, it's not really how it goes. I think maybe World War I And the chain of events that actually got every party involved in that might have actually happened because of a mistake, because of a mistimed communication between two actors after the death of Franz Ferdinand. But in any case, no, this is horseshit. So the example he's talking about here under Reagan is in the Lebanon War, 82, the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, the siege of Beirut. Do you realize that this, and there was a phone call from Reagan to more than one, actually. The Israeli withdrawal from Beirut, I think, was in like September. Reagan had been making phone calls to Begin telling him to stop the fighting as early as June 11th. But obviously the siege of Beirut carried on for a couple of months after this. There is the call from August, I think it was August 13th, when Sharon started shelling West Beirut incredibly hard, and I think about 300 people died in one day. It was a really insane act. And that's when Reagan spends the whole day trying to get on the phone to Begin to tell him to call off these renewed strikes, and then they get called off. What is not mentioned by all the charlatans who pose this thing is that the Israeli cabinet, by the time Reagan called, had already called off the strikes. Did you know that? Yeah, that's a true story. That's a true story. Because Sharon, as if you know anything about the First Lebanon War, Sharon basically fought that war on his own. So much of what Sharon did during that war was either without cabinet approval or him lying to get cabinet approval or him misinterpreting cabinet approval. This is from the book about it, Israel's Lebanon War. The Americans were furious over what they deemed to be a brutal and wholly unjustified action. President Reagan tried to phone Prime Minister Begin for over an hour, but couldn't get through. When he finally did reach Begin at his office in the Knesset, the Prime Minister was napping on his couch. Reagan called the bombings unfathomable and senseless and demanded an immediate ceasefire, adding the warning that if the Israelis did not cooperate, he would pull Habib out and cancel the American mediation mission. Also, Habib is the guy who's negotiating for the PLO to withdraw from Beirut. The PLO have already agreed to withdraw. The only thing that's missing by this point of the siege is Arafat. And within 24 hours, he agreed to leave as well. By then, the bombing had been called to a halt anyway, for the cabinet convened... Oh, wait, it is. Yeah, here. By then, the bombing had been called to a halt anyway, for the cabinet convened earlier that afternoon at Sharon's request was equally appalled by the mayhem being perpetuated in its name. And after this is when the cabinet stripped Sharon of his rights to command the IAF or the, I think it was the Israeli Air Force and the Navy, because they'd already disapproved, they'd already said no more ground operations. And then Sharon got mad and started firing from the air. And then before Reagan even gets on the phone to Begin, the cabinet's already called off the airstrikes. So that's one perfect phone call in the bin, Hasan. The second one, I don't even know which one he's talking about here with George H.W. Bush. I think he's maybe talking about the Madrid conference, the peace negotiations in 1991. And that's when Yitzhak Shamir, right-winger, former terrorist in the Lehi, was refusing to negotiate with the PLO. And Bush Sr. withheld $10 billion worth of economic and financial aid to Israel to help them with resettling Jews from the Soviet Union. And that resulted in Shamir going to the talks. But again, this was like trying to get Israel to the peace process at Madrid was a long process. It wasn't just one phone call. And not to mention, the Madrid process went nowhere. It went absolutely nowhere. It didn't go anywhere. Like Shamir stonewalled the entire time and then later said that his plan was to stonewall. It didn't go anywhere. And as far as I know, this wasn't about military action, but okay. And Biden in 2021, again, it's just completely false. By the time of this Biden phone call in 2021, which was over the Sheikh Jarrah crisis and Al-Aqsa riots, this was actually, I think the phone call was, I think there were about between 8 and 10 phone calls between Biden and Netanyahu. This was a very short conflict. It lasted like 11 days. But this wasn't just a phone call with threats. This was because the IDF didn't have the objective to destroy Hamas. Their objective was to take out key targets. And the last phone call that Biden had with Netanyahu was after the IDF had already announced that their objectives were basically all complete, that they just needed 24 hours. Now, Netanyahu was publicly saying that we don't accept time limits. We don't accept time limits from anyone. But the White House wrote this off because they knew he was just pandering to his base. That was it. But the other thing that also secured the ceasefire was that there was an assurance from Egypt that Egypt had managed to convince Hamas to stop firing rockets. And apparently this is, again, one phone call. Again, it's not. It's 8 calls. But, and it's also phone calls that Biden's having with Egypt to get Hamas to stop firing rockets. And it's when the IDF have completed their objectives that's when the ceasefire actually happens. So long story short, 3 strikes. Hasan's a fucking retard. And honestly, Hasan, as the president of the United States, trying to pursue this perfect phone call, that would be cringe. Okay, that would be quite cringe. Absolute fucking git. I can't. Because I've heard people. This one in particular, I could not fucking believe. I've heard people say this a lot. The Reagan phone call, because this was like a really popular talking point. Owen Jones has made this talking point as well. There are whole articles about this actually. Wait, Reagan stop Israel phone call. I'm pretty sure you'll find like, yeah, this is the call here, the article about it from the New York Times. But yeah, there's like Katie Halper here. Shocked and outraged president telephoned Israel. Reagan put an end to Israel's bombing in 20 minutes. Like, none of this is true. None of this is true. The PLO evacuation began, by the way, less than a week after this phone call. Like, the Israeli mission was done. It was finished. They'd already got the PLO to agree to evacuate. They'd got Syria to say that they'll accept like a few thousand fighters.
After the
and what's it like? This is how people
after the
phrase it.
The GHF started operating. Haaretz interviewed half a dozen Israeli soldiers. They said we were ordered to fire on people in order to control their movements. It had nothing to do with protecting us. No one ever fired back. One of them, even the phrase he used was, "Our method."
Where's the Reagan?
We have ever to bomb it.
He's Reagan
Oh yeah, here.
Just and we don't have to attack anybody. We don't have to bomb anybody. We just have.
Do you know who this
stop
is?
Sending the weapons.
Remember.
Do you know who this is? I had no idea. It's him, isn't it? It's Mark Perlmutter. This is the guy who started the claim that Israel was ordering snipers to shoot children. This guy. And his evidence for it was that there were some bodies that had high velocity ammunition in it. Because he, I guess, wanted people to believe that high velocity means it had to come from a sniper. Like, okay. And not just any rifle used by Hamas or Israel. Huh. Yeah, there's his name. Okay. So he's going to push this theory as well. I told you, this guy's a propagandist. You can be a doctor and a propagandist at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive.
We just have to stop sending the weapons.
Remember, in the early 80s, Reagan stopped the bombing of Beirut with one telephone call in 20 minutes.
In which he called what Israel was doing a Holocaust.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because actually, he called Menachem Begin and he said, "I'm calling you for 2 reasons. One is to tell you that the symbol of your country is becoming a 3-month-old baby with its arms blown off," which was a picture that somebody gave him, and he was so moved by it that he put it on his desk. And we're talking about Ronald Reagan. He was hardly a peacenik. And then he said, secondly, if you don't stop the terror bombing of Beirut right now, there is going to be a major reevaluation of U.S. aid to Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship in general. And exactly like Mark said, he brags that Reagan